She went on secret missions.
She was a
mission for the missus.
She was a strong
character.
female character.
What is, everyone? Welcome to Nerd on the Podcast. You didn't need, but you deserve, where all levels of nerd are welcome.
Yes.
Today, we tear down the walls that divide us and join forces with our brethren who share our plight. Today, we take a dive into the earlier works of Marvel Comics with the legendary Chris Claremont story, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills.
Wow.
How'd I do it, Tom?
Now,
I can't take credit for that speech. Tom wrote that, but I wanted to do
pulling
it
back the
justice.
veil. We're doing this episode because you wanted to.
Yeah, pulling back the veil. We're doing this episode because I wanted to. I don't know.
You repeated it word for
Here's the
word.
thing. You may not know this about me. I'm an X-Men fan.
Wait,
Is
really?
You know what? Never mind.
Hold,
The
real
sweater,
quick.
maybe?
Can we put the fucking veil back?
Yeah,
What did you think of the speech I wrote in the beginning?
I loved it.
Okay, good.
It was wonderful. I saw the today's and I was like, I know exactly how
You
he
hear that,
wants me
Ollie?
to say that.
You
Can you
hear that,
stroke
Ollie?
my ego
Sometimes-
just a little bit?
Sometimes
Well,
I write
here's
good
the thing.
shit, Ollie.
When I see today
Wow.
twice in two sentences, I know exactly how Tom wants me to say it.
Today, we're canceling the apocalypse. Fucking.
So yeah, for me,
Calm down,
X-Men is the reason I got into comics. In the
I was
first
gonna say,
place.
are we initial reactioning?
So no, I'm just. He said it's because I picked this topic.
He's
and I
wearing an
did.
X-Men sweater. He needs to explain.
Funny enough, this isn't actually anything I read until recently, because Tom bought it for me. Actually, because he knows I love
Peasants.
X-Men.
Yeah.
He got it for me for my birthday. Very nice of him. And it
then we had
quickly
sex.
rose
Probably.
to the top as one of my favorite X-Men comics, and we'll get into the nitty-gritties. But before we get into that, I'm Corey.
I'm Caitlin.
Ali.
and I'm Tom.
And I am Josh, and this episode is brought to you in part by the Nerd On Nation, which is powered by Patreon.
Patreon.
If you are new to what Patreon is, it is essentially an exclusive membership service in which you can support your favorite creators like Nerd
Ali.
On or Ali
Yeah, I hope I'm part of that.
Josh.
and Josh.
and Corey.
For as little as $1 to $5 a month, you can get fun stuff like exclusive content that is not heard by anybody.
Exclusives.
But you-
Exclusives.
But
Just
you.
you.
But you.
Just for you.
And you get a Discord server in which you can chat with friends about Nerd On. You can chat about gardening. You can chat about your pets.
Your
chat
personal
about
stuff.
personal stuff, comic books,
Or
all fun
the
stuff.
things you've learned.
Yes.
Yes.
Today.
Our journeys.
Today.
I learned.
But you can check that out at nerdon.io/Patreon. And more. This episode is brought to you in part by Comixology, the internet's #1 source for comics. You can check that out at nerdon.io/Comixology.
Comixology.
Do know that a little of every purchase goes towards keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
So yes.
Help us out while you help your nerddom grow.
Yes, check that out. We have lots of affiliates, actually. You can check that out on our website if you go to affiliates. Amazon, HostGator. There's lots on there. If you are a podcaster and thinking about really getting into it, check out Blueberry. We have a code on there. Use Nerd On. You get a month free.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
not bad.
and
Spelled,
they
it's spelled like Blueborough.
Yeah.
Blueborough.
Is that what you were
BLU.
smiling about over there the whole time?
But I said
I was like, what is he gonna say?
BLUBRRY.
Burr.
Blueberry.
But there we have it.
Blueberry.
Yes.
There's
Let's
the housekeeping.
get into it.
Let's get into this. So,
Corey's like, please, I wanna
initial
talk about X-Men.
reactions?
No.
What?
This is a completed
Oh,
work.
that is.
Mother
It is.
S-O. Mother
complete-
S-O. This is
could
the
you
I was
completed
not
book.
thinking about it being completed.
And
That means
because-
at the end of the episode,
Oh my gosh.
we're going to rate 1 out of 5. No, okay. 1 through 5.
Okay, I was
1
gonna
being the
say-
Only
lowest,
one
5
here that
being the
can do that.
highest. So that allows us
Legally.
to right now
Guess that grump.
Gonna guess a grump in here. Who's gonna like it most? It's probably gonna be just me.
Dun, dun,
Anyway.
I
Dun,
think
dun,
this
dun, dun,
is-
dun, 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 dun.
It's one of the
Wow.
few times we struck a harmony, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
it
so.
Was it was the closest.
great.
it's
Who will be the
closest
grump of
it's been.
this show?
Cotty.
So everyone at home,
boy.
if you were brand new to Nerd On and listening to this for the first time because you saw the marquee topic, which is X-Men, Guess That Grump is a segment of our show that we're going to choose who we think is going to rate this the lowest. And that, again, it's 1 out of 5, and whoever is the lowest out of us. So it's a 4.9, 4.8, whatever it is, the lowest in the group, you are the grump for the week. We encourage everyone at home to play along, to send us who you thought would have been the grump, but also the numbers that you have. If it's 1 out of 5, what you thought about the actual topic, the marquee topic at hand. So since I always explain, I will let Ollie choose himself. No, I'll let Ollie choose first.
Who's first? Who do you think it's gonna
Who do I think it's going to be?
That's what we
But
just
pick
said.
Just kidding. Let's go with Caitlin.
Wow.
be? All right, it's one for Kayla.
I want also to everyone to mark this date. I'm saying it for the record. Tom is compiling the average aggregate
He
score
is.
for everybody.
Oh, yeah?
And Caitlin
be
and
great.
Josh are fighting for the top number, which is around 4.2, 4.3. Corey,
Nice.
Ollie,
Oh,
and
no.
I fucking like change
Yeah.
between
With that
like a
episode?
3.8 and 3.9.
Oh,
Really?
yeah.
We're that close?
We're that
Wow.
close. But it's like,
Jesus.
again, it's like 3.89 to 1.76. And then it's like Corey
Oh, that
like
changed everything.
7, 8.
Wow.
That
So who's your
close?
guess, Tom? With those numbers in mind.
Wow.
Oh, it's Ollie for sure.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
Ollie for sure. He doesn't like comic books.
I am going to guess.
Joshua.
I score them relatively, though.
He likes the comic book movie, not the book.
Ollie.
Oh man.
I picked Josh.
Nice.
Okay.
He was
You-
solid.
I'll do.
You know the right thing to choose.
He's-
Oh well, with that, Ollie.
Just resigned. He's
Ollie
like,
just gave an eye roll and went.
Well,
yeah,
I just meant
guess."
like generally speaking, not
Generally
specifically
speaking.
for this.
No, I'll do Caitlin. No,
What a twist.
I know.
I don't know. You said Zachary Levi had a mole.
Well, that wasn't a bad thing.
Oh, you said it like it was.
Our Tom has none, Corey has none, Josh has one, and Ollie and Caitlin both have two.
And what does the Nerd on Nation say?
We don't have it yet.
Oh,
we don't have it yet.
Okay, pending.
This is a note I have that we'll talk about after the show. We'll
Okay,
figure it
cool.
out. Semantics.
So since that's out of the way, we'll go into our complete spoiler of that segment with our initial reactions and our first impressions. So,
I'll start it because it's my idea to do the episode. It's my fault. I'm sorry. No. So for me, Tom got this trade for me, the God Loves Man Kills, and I read it twice on an airplane in a row.
Oh,
like
wow.
finished
Oh.
it, closed it, and went. Let's
Did
go
I-
around again.
Did I give it to you and you read it immediately, or did I have to like yell at you to like read this shit? You motherfucker.
I read it 2 weeks after you gave it to me.
Yeah, I had motherfucker.
You gave it to me. I didn't read it for like a month or two.
Yeah.
And I gave it back to you.
No, you gave it to Tom
Wow.
after that.
You gave it to
But
Tom.
yeah,
And then I read it to Julie.
yeah, you finally read it. But I read this cover to cover on a plane twice from Washington to Southern California, which is only like a 2-hour flight.
Right.
I was hooked. It's
not
first of
long.
all, it's what?
It's not long. We'll talk
No,
about
it's not that long.
Yeah.
It has pretty much -1 my favorite X-Men in it. So right off the cover, I was hooked. But the thing I've always liked about X-Men, and Tom has talked about this because I've told him many times,
In
is
the comfort of his bed.
spooning. The X-Men stories for me have always meant a lot because they're always the placeholder for whoever was marginalized at the time, right? And to me, the fact that they can keep it political in that sense and
Yeah.
talk about, it started off as a civil rights thing, right? To me, has always touched on a part of some sort of humanity within me, and they've always really kind of shook me in a way of like, oh shit, like I'm gonna talk about something that's not very comfortable for superheroes to talk about.
Yeah.
And so for this being written in 1982, the subject matter that they deal with is really hard to swallow and strangely still relevant today. So when I read it, it really hit me hard. And to see Stryker on the page after watching him in the movies and characters and stuff like that, it was interesting to see the take. And this was a one-off. Up until 2003, it wasn't considered canon, and now is considered canon.
Okay.
Tom will get into that, I'm sure.
Interesting.
But it was like a strangely emotional read for me.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
Kayla.
Interesting. So I didn't have much time with the physical book. I think I read just the book itself one time, and then relied on what was it called?
Ancillary knowledge.
No, I forget the name of the show. It was like Backlog or something. But basically, it was this guy who was explaining this to a couple of his friends who hadn't read it yet, and
Hello, my name's Tom. I'm here as a resource.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm here as a resource.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
But
Wait, hold on. I'm a resource with Corey.
Yeah. Oh, filmmaker with Corey.
Aw,
That's
you're so
funny. Calling
cute.
back to episode 1.
no, but I knew just from the title that it was going to be about something heavy. It was going to be about something hard and how kind of people can be inherently evil. And then I was surprised, but not in a bad way, that it was like, we're going to go the religious route. We're going to go the political route. We're going to go the evangelical route. And I was like, oh, dang. Well, yep, that's the way to do it.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
doing this.
And
well, we're
buckle up,
doing it.
buckaroo.
for the uncultured or the uninitiated who listen in or watching on YouTube, what's your background with comic books? Like, how was your take from what you knew coming into this?
So the only thing I really knew about X-Men before was the animated series that was on TV growing
Da-na-na-na-na.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew about that, and aside from that, I didn't really
Some of the
know.
movies.
I think
Bone
I'd
Claws?
seen one or two.
Mhm.
But X-Men was never something I was super invested in, and I don't know why. It's not like I didn't like it,
Right.
but
It's just one of those things.
yeah, it was just one of
Like
those
I
things.
didn't see Rocky until last year. Just one of those things.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that, but
It's amazing.
but yeah, so it was a lot of, it was strange because it was a lot of really familiar characters
Mhm.
in the realer side of the world right now. And I was the whole time I was reading it, it was kind of like I see how this definitely was in the time that it was written, and it makes sense that it was written in the time that it was written.
Yeah.
But it also, they did it in such a way where it could be any time.
Mhm.
And it feels especially
Maybe
relevant
that's sad.
now. And it
That
is
it could
sad.
be
sad.
any time.
It's sad because I
The
like
subject matter.
this
for sure.
was, to me, reading this was like a larger societal thing of like, oh, we still haven't gotten over this.
That's what
Yeah.
X-Men is so good at.
That's-
That's one of its big appeals is that it does
It can apply
it directly can apply to
To-
anything.
to
yeah,
any
to
outcast
anything.
group, any group that's disenfranchised.
Yeah. And they, all I was thinking was, well, damn it.
Be
Damn it.
better.
Yeah.
Why
Well,
aren't we better
dang
than
it.
this? And some of it seemed a little too far fetched reaction wise from some people, which I'll get into that later. But overall, it's good. I liked it. I liked the comic book.
Nice.
Josh
Be real honest.
hated it.
At first, I did not like it. I'll tell you why. I had a hard time knowing what was going on, and so I had to actually read it. I probably read it 3 or 4 times.
Oh wow.
And after that, because I had to take it in, I had to like.
Did you
'cause there were
Lebowski
some-
yourself with it?
There was
Yeah, a little bit, huh?
there were some panels that I was like, what is happening?
in the
And
panel?
nothing was telling me what was happening. So I was like, okay,
Mhm.
going back a few pages and reading again. And like I did it with the whole book where it was like, okay, I'm still confused. Back. And reading the whole thing again and again, and actually watching some videos as well of like explaining it. And it's like, okay, cool, got it.
Yeah,
And I actually, after the 3rd or 4th time, I was like, I really dig this. It's
And you read it on the app, right?
I read it on the app.
Comicsology?
Yeah,
Comicsology.
I do
Mhm.
this. Because I read at night. My wife and I, we read together when we're going to bed, and
Aw.
then when she goes to bed, I pop open my iPad and I start reading comics. And so, no shit, Comixology, I really do love it because
Yeah.
I can read at night. I can turn down the brightness and I can read through my comics.
Mhm.
And
Some would say it's the #1 place to read your comic books.
All right,
And
ad.
so,
Thank you. Hashtag sponsored.
so yeah, I just started from the beginning multiple times, and I really did. Once I knew what was going on, and I understood like the chapters and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I was like, cool, I got it. I like it.
Dig it.
I dig it.
Ollie?
For me, going into this, I kind of had a feeling of what the book was going to be about because of the things that you kind of told me. I don't know if Tom told me about this before, but immediately, like when I heard Stryker, I was like, oh, this is where Bryan Singer got X2 from, basically. Like it's this plot lifted
Yeah.
from
A little bit,
X2 adapted.
Right.
Stryker's not a
Evangelical.
evangelical.
He's a military man.
Yeah, he's a military man. Blah blah blah. It's more catered to Wolverine's story
Right.
still, so it takes place at his
The lake.
the lake, whatever, Alkali Lake. So going into this, I kind of had that a little bit of maybe some of the things that would normally stop me from being
You
able
were
to
tethered.
follow.
You had a little bit of a
I
tether.
had a little bit of backstory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
Right.
just at least a feeling of what this might be about. and it's pretty close as far as like the intent and kind of as far as like what the character wants to do and all that stuff,
Okay.
and kind of like what he achieves in the third act or tries to achieve in the third act similarly.
Yeah.
There's the
at,
same-
at a military level rather
it's
than
on the
yeah.
kind of the flip side of
There's
that.
the
It's
same
it's
plot
subverted.
device,
Yeah.
but not the same story.
Not the same
Right.
right, exactly.
Because that story is garbage.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, continue.
Backstory for me though, when I was a kid, my only reference for Marvel was Spider-Man and X-Men animated series, and I loved the X-Men animated series.
Bring it back. They might bring it back.
X-Men's my favorite like Marvel thing.
Yeah.
Like property.
Same.
So my childhood was Batman and X-Men basically. And this one I actually really enjoyed it. I liked all the character. I liked the cast that was in there.
Yeah.
And I was
Kitty
pleasantly
Pryde
surprised, like,
yeah.
because they called her Ariel and I wasn't aware of that alias.
Oh, right.
And I was like, who is this? And then they called her Kitty. And then, well, obviously they say Ariel while she's phasing through. So
There
I'm
was
like,
a time
oh,
where they
this
weren't
is like,
sure what her alias was going to be, and then they just stuck with Kitty Pryde.
well, I thought it was maybe like a different character because I think she's drawn like to be ethnic.
yeah.
I can't quite tell.
Not really.
Yeah, but she's just drawn a little bit darker skin, so whatever.
ambiguous.
Mediterranean at best, let's say.
So you thought maybe she was someone else.
So maybe she's someone else that they make because it's a little bit older. Maybe like Kitty Pryde's a '90s thing. I didn't have
but
that
then you
knowledge.
saw Katya.
But
And you're
then-
like, oh,
exactly.
I don't know who that is.
So I liked the cast of X-Men. And I think I know which one you don't like. But we'll wait
Me?
for that reveal.
Ooh.
But I do like them, and I usually do like them over most people that don't like that person. Coy for a
interesting.
little bit later.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. You got me
Oh.
intrigued.
But overall, I
Hinty,
dug it.
hinty.
It was short and sweet. I almost want to say it was a little too short.
Read Killing
But
Joke.
like
Yeah.
but maybe that's
That's
just a
some-
sign that
maybe-
I wanted more,
Yeah,
and I was
maybe that's a
enjoying
good
the
thing.
read. So yeah,
Dude, his next book, Days of Future Past.
For moi. So
Tell me more
I
about that.
I watch a bunch of YouTube channels that do like comic book stuff because like I'm really into. You want me to name them?
I was gonna say, is that Comic Explained?
Well, Comic Explain and Comic Story. The thing I like about them, they do weekly pools.
Shout outs.
And they had a podcast, which is an award-winning podcast called The Weekly Pool, where they talk about the comic books weekly on every Wednesday. Wednesday is when you get new comic books. And so Comics Explain, his name is Robert Jefferson. He has pretty much, I think, the most expansive knowledge of X-Men ever.
Oh.
He's nonstop read it ever since like I think the 80s. But so he means he has
Great
a lot of
channel,
backlog,
by the way.
right?
And the way he talks about this book got me thinking of like, maybe it's a fucking big deal. Because he always talked about Chris Claremont and how important he was and to Marvel and all that stuff. And talked about how important he was that he created X-Men. Because the way Jack Kirby and Stan Lee intended for X-Men to be was kind of like, I don't want to have to explain why people have powers. He's like, I want to have people to have powers just to have powers. I don't have to do like a radioactive power. It's like, they're just in genetics. They just have it.
They're just born with it.
They're just
He's got
born with it, baby. Maybe it's Maybelline.
Love you, Tom.
And so when he talked about God Loves Man Kills, like, he said, this is like the book. And then I immediately, like, I didn't even read it. I just said, Corey, read this. I think you'll like it. I think you should love it. And then in that time of buying
I remember
you should
after
love it.
reading it, I texted him. I was like, "Oh, what do you think?" He's like, "I haven't read it yet." And I was like, "Whoa, okay."
And I just knew the story and what it kind of outlined, and I knew the X2 bit, and like that's what they call the primarily source material of X2, which I think
Yeah.
that's Far Cry. It's like kind of saying like Dark Knight Returns is what Dark Knight is based off. Like, no, it's not.
this
at
is the
all.
closest thing you can like
Right.
see.
The closest
Yeah.
thing is like they have X-Men.
Yeah.
But
Fair enough.
And there's that one thing with Charles.
yeah. So, yeah, with this, I mean, comic books, I've been reading comic books for a long time, but typically I stick with the modern stuff. And so when I come to this book and I come to older comic books, I love old art style. I am not privy to old written word. It just strikes me in a weird way all the time
Yeah.
because like it's different. It's not clean.
Yeah.
It's not Helvetica. You know, it's
Right.
not sharp.
Right.
But like that's just because I'm a snob and
It's
I was
almost Comic Sans.
it's kind of like, oh, I don't like oven baked foods. I only like microwave stuff. You know that phase in the 90s
Oh,
where
yeah.
everyone's like, I gotta have it nuked.
Yeah.
It's that kind of. Honestly, I know that's affecting me, and
It's
I'm.
when pesto hit the U.S. in
Yeah.
'93.
It's. I know it's a stupid thing that I get affected by, but
Like to me, at least I'm aware that I'm affected by it.
Yeah.
So that helps me understand like why if I read an old comic, it takes me a little bit longer to read. But the thing about this book that I really love is that, to Caitlin's point, it is almost everlasting,
Yeah.
and that it sadly, due to the subject matter, it like we may never not need to read this book
Hopefully,
again.
It's not.
This book was written in
everlasting.
1982, and we still need to read this book.
Yeah.
And I think actually, in all honesty, this should be read in like schools. It should honestly be read in schools if you want to do like a social studies class. Like here's pop culture and then how it affects the world. I think it's really big in that sense. I love the story, I love the book, and I like the slippery slope that it dances with. But we'll get that later.
I actually dug the art.
Me too.
Like there was something like I don't want to dismiss it by saying it's quaint, but it's like there's like a certain character to like
I
a
love
slightly
especially
older
how
comics.
Magneto's drawn is beautiful.
So there was that grit to it that I
It's a
like.
very nice
Yeah, I was gonna say.
graphic quality.
It's almost what you would call like this would be printed on pulp.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
it was
yeah.
sold as a graphic
Right.
novel. It wasn't sold as
Right.
issues.
Yeah,
Wasn't
which
this
is
like-
why it was
Was
standalone.
it a series of 6? Is that right? Just for context, because this
I
is
think
fine.
No,
it's just,
this was series. This is
is it.
Marvel Comics graphic novels.
Everywhere I see, it's listed as number 5. I don't know
Probably
it might be
of
their fifth graphic novel,
but this
it
was
don't-
like by
it's
itself.
its own standalone thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So
That's
now
good.
we'll go into the meat and I say productions.
Brief history.
Meat and
lore.
potatoes.
why. Potatoes.
Meat and potatoes of the show. So brief synopsis, production, and then we'll go into our favorite parts and all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
who wants to do
Sounds
the
good.
production?
I can do it.
It's short.
Yeah, I know. That's why I picked it.
Okay, go ahead.
So the publisher was Marvel Comics. It was released as a Marvel graphic novel. The writer was Chris Claremont. The artist was Brent Anderson. The original artist was Neil Adams. And the Marvel editor-in-chief was Jim Shooter. And the first issue hit in 1982.
So Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief, and he asked Neil Adams to write this up. And then from what he thought, what they were doing, Jim Shooter said, no, never mind. And he brought in Chris Claremont, and Chris Claremont said, okay, we're going to do this. And then Neil Adams was like, okay, no, never mind. And then brought in the new writer, or the new
Brent
artist.
Anderson.
So it was like that kind of thing.
There
There
was a
was,
little shuffling cups.
exactly. There's a big shuffle in Marvel Comics, and Marvel actually has probably the biggest history in those in those shufflings and all that stuff. Like Jeff Johns was kind of like the big impact
Right,
in DC,
DC.
but Marvel had like the comic book bust. Like the comic book bust was actually, to me, I think mainly Marvel's fault. And when I'm talking about that, it was like in the 90s, people couldn't tell what the value of comic books were because comic book stores weren't really telling how much they sold of it. And a lot of it was because of these premier comic books that were coming out. Like, oh, this writer is doing this writer doing that. Again, Image was coming out and all this stuff. So like comic books was a high commodity. But at this point in the 80s, there was a big reshuffling of like structure and who's like leading in what way and how are we shuffling the characters around. At the point, X-Men couldn't sell. X-Men, again, they were just superpowered heroes that didn't need that much explanation. You know, they had like their rights and they were like, again, the marginalized peoples. But Chris Claremont, and this is kind of like the big namestay, was like, I'm going to tell a soap opera. I'm going to tell a character that matters more about the characters than it does about like
Powers.
world-ending events.
Yeah.
I don't need an Avenger-esque calamity
I don't
to
need
be
an apocalypse. I don't need
to
like,
say that
Avengers
this
level threat.
say that this is an important story. But what I am going to do, I am going to try to teach readers, kids, how the comic books are not just for kids and that they're powerful stories. And again, Chris Claremont, again, everything he does, he weaves in a beautiful array of like drama, and it's all about character and where they're going to go from that point on top of what he's doing. And a lot of times it's just a spectacle of the universe falling apart. And then you can tell like, this is garbage. And we know that it's only going to sell because it has my favorite comic book character on the front page.
Yeah.
But this is like, you know, a lot of you first start out, you don't even start out with any of the like big name X-Men characters who are only big because of the movies. You start
Yeah.
with like Colossus, who hasn't gotten like a big like movie like
Anything.
spotlight until recently.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's
And his sister who's in anything anymore.
no.
But like, there's also something to say about a story. There are plenty of comics out there, and there's only a couple handfuls of stories that have lasted that people still talk about 30-something, 40-something years later. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, there's like this Killing Joke, stuff like that, Long Halloween. But this is up there. It's amazing that this is still talked about today.
You'd find out that actually, in more cases than not, that the short stories are the ones that actually have stand the test of time, and it's not the long epic stories. It's
No.
the short ones that like are really great pockets and capsules in time.
They
Yeah.
just grab you in the face and pull you in.
And a lot
"You
of
need
them
to
like
hear this."
social commentaries, like Kingdom Come, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, who wants to go do
This just struck me. This
Please.
is 37 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and it was
Yeah.
That's
made.
why I
dope.
said 30 and then went
Yeah.
40.
37. Sorry, I had to.
Why?
Don't worry, they'll get it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it was made 19 years after they were created.
Wow.
So they've been going on for a
Wow.
while. So who wants to do brief snaps?
I guess I can.
You can do it.
I'm gonna make it really brief.
Make it real quick.
because I think we have some stuff to talk about. Essentially, you know who the X-Men are? A group of mutants led by Charles Xavier. There's a man named William Stryker who is hunting down mutants and extinguishing their lives.
1982.
Because I'm gonna jump around here because he had an experience where he got in a car crash with his wife.
Mhm.
She gave birth to a mutant, and he took it as a sign from God because he killed his wife, killed the mutant baby, and
BT dub.
went to commit suicide. Got in the car and lit a match on a gas leaking car and blew it up. He survived, and he took that as a sign from God that he was meant to extinguish the mutant race because he believes they're from hell. Fast forward to 1982, he's hunting down mutants, and he's gotten to the point where he's killing kids. So at this point,
Started with a baby, so-
Charles Xavier has decided to debate this man and appeal to humanity. The only problem is on TV, Professor X isn't very interesting. He's highly intellectual. He's making a lot of good points. Even the people in the newsroom are talking like he's got the better points, but
Kennedy Nixon.
Stryker is more entertaining and his words are more passionate. And so people are responding to that across the globe.
Emboldened, some would say.
Yeah. So we cut to the X Mansion and they're watching it and they're going, Jesus, he's getting destroyed up there. This sucks. Let's go to the training room. So they all go to the danger room and train a little bit. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, Professor X, Cyclops, and Storm are on their way back and they're ambushed. They're not killed, they're incapacitated, but someone makes it look like they were killed. And it turns out that Stryker's gang has kidnapped them. One thing leads to another, and it turns out what Stryker is attempting to do is to weaponize, drug and weaponize Professor X, like we saw in X2, to kill all mutants at a global scale.
Yeah.
The rest of the gang finds out about this. We have Nightcrawler, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, Wolverine. What?
And the master of magnetism.
Oh, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Not yet. They go to the car crash because they've been told that the car blew up. Wolverine knows that it's a cover up. He's like, I staged a few of these myself. And they see this car. So they go after this car, and in it is Stryker's right hand woman, Anne. And she starts pedaling it, right? Like Wolverine rips in, takes two of the guys out, and she floors it. And Colossus is going to stop the car. Kurt takes her, bamfs out. And they get attacked by these two guys in huge metal suits. And before they can get totally attacked, who shows up? Magneto. Wraps them all up in cocoons. They go back to the mansion to interrogate them. Wolverine is trying to threaten them into telling, who took it, who did this.
Claw
And it's
trick,
not really
1, 2,
working.
3.
It's not really working. And Magneto goes, I'll take care of it. And Wolverine goes, all right, you guys are lucky. And Magneto goes, ooh, not so much.
Not sure.
And he basically tortures them with pieces of shrapnel metal until they tell them everything that's going
He's
on.
literally pretty much threading metal through their bodies.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
That's what that
there's-
spread is.
Good God.
So they finally tell him, and they notice that Stryker's going to have this event happen. He goes, okay, we got to go stop him. Meanwhile, Stryker has drugged and manipulated Charles Xavier to the point where he kills Storm and Cyclops, completely knocks him out. So they're taking them to the incinerator room in this elevator on the basement, right? Meanwhile, Kitty Pryde and Colossus's sister have kind of tried their own espionage and both pretty much been captured.
Yeah.
And so the elevator that's supposed to be going down starts going up and up and up and up and up and suddenly goes through the roof and jumps out and escapes. But it's Magneto and all the X-Men, and they're there. There's a whole side storyline where Kitty is running through the city and being chased by Anne and all that kind of stuff because she's supposed to be killed. And eventually they get on this subway and Magneto saves them there. And fast forward to the event.
Climax.
As he's giving the speech, there are certain people who begin to start to bleed from the ears and hold their heads. And what he's doing is he's magnifying Charles's power out into the world. And the closer they are, the worse they're having it.
if they're mutants.
So the X-Men go, you know what? We have no choice. We have to attack. We have to shut this thing down before it gets too bad. And this is all televised, mind you. So they have to try to do it in a way that's not on screen in front of everybody because it's exactly what Stryker wants. He wants them to attack.
Yeah.
So Magneto makes this big spectacle as a distraction. Everyone else sneaks through the back. They find Charles. He's kind of fighting them off subconsciously. So they come up with this plan where Wolverine and Nightcrawler bamf over to him and are going to attack him. Cyclops deflects his blast and somehow knocks him out of it. And then once that's done, they decide, you know what, we're going to go on TV and we're going to we're going to challenge him. We're going to challenge Stryker, because at this point the crowd's trying to kill them and it's getting
They're
out of
totally on
hand.
Stryker's
There's
side.
a few. Well, it's like half and half. There's still some people in the crowd who are like, "This is crazy. This is way too much." Even the police are like, "This is insane."
The
Everybody back
broadcasting
up.
committee as well as security.
Meanwhile, what happened while they were trying to shut off the machine, Anne was
Oh, yeah.
suffering from that.
That's right.
And he
Turns
basically
out she's immune.
turned against her and
he
killed her
on screen.
on screen.
In front of everybody. He pushed her off and said, "You know what? If you had really been a believer, you would understand why I'm doing this."
Threw her
And
off,
shoves her
snaps
off,
her
snaps her neck. So they come back and they have this talk, and he's, pointing at Nightcrawler and going, "Are you kidding me? How do you call that human? That's not a human." And Kitty Pryde has a wonderful speech about being like, he's more human than I ever hoped to be. Like, he's kind, he's caring.
He was depraved from everything.
And all of a sudden, Stryker pulls out a gun and is going to shoot one of the X-Men.
Kitty.
Yep. And all of a sudden you hear a bam. And Stryker's been shot by one of the police officers. And someone goes, "Why are you going to do that?" And you go, "Are you kidding me? He was pulling a gun on an unarmed child." Because at this point, I think Kitty Pryde's 15.
Yeah, something like that.
14 or 15. So they take him down. And one thing needs to know, we're back at the X-Mansion. Charles and Magneto have been working together for the first time in forever. Charles is depressed because he's like, "I feel like I failed." Cyclops has a wonderful speech about being like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is what we do. We have to be better than them. The means have to be equal to the end. It can't be the means justify the end, right? Or the end justifies the means," which is Magneto's approach. So he extends his hand to Charles, says, "Come work with me." And Charles reaches out and then goes, "You know what? I can't. If they still believe in my dream, I got to do it." And Magneto, who, like, low-key, as I get older, I'm like, "Oh, man, he's got some really good points," decides to leave and says, "I'm not going to cry over another mutant's grave. I'm not going to cry over yours." And yeah, that's where it ends. Basically, Charles has kept his dream alive through his pupils, who he's taught.
A nice line from Aurora.
Oh yeah, with
Teacher becomes pupil and pupil becomes teacher.
She has a moment with Cyclops on the balcony, being like, "You did a good thing. You taught Xavier, who's taught us since we were little." Anyway, that's where it ends.
End credits.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. It was like fucking 2 minutes.
Sorry, that was longer
30
than I wanted it to be.
30
I think it was a little bit longer than our Hush one. Don't worry. That was our longest. It was like 40 minutes long.
It was
my
not.
God.
How long
I'm
was that?
kidding.
Like 3-4
I'm kidding.
minutes?
It was like
Yeah,
maybe
totally
10.
3 minutes.
Shit.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
That's
Anyway.
There's
so
a lot there.
going into it, wow, holy crap! This book. Favorite parts? You want to just go straight into the goodness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite parts. Magneto, my boy,
Magneto, Magnus. I'm so
Yeah.
glad they actually called him Magnus,
Magnus.
because you never hear that ever anymore. But also, again, this is old, so that's why they probably don't call him.
What's that name about?
It's him. That's his name. He also goes by Magnus.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And see that, like, he goes by Eric. Everyone knows him, Eric Lensher and all that stuff, but like he goes by Magnus, and Xavier calls him blah 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 Magnus. I'm like, I forgot that he goes by that.
Mhm.
It's kind of like knowing when.
I had never heard that.
Do you know
name before?
Bruce Wayne's also has an alternate identity? Matches Malone.
What?
No.
No,
No.
not a lot of people know about that.
No one really talks about that one anymore.
But the thing is, like, he still uses that in current comic books,
Yeah, as like a
interesting.
like
pseudonym.
how to get information from criminals.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on here. It's like, if you don't read it, you'll never know.
Right.
And so, like, that's the kind of the rub you get. But then Magneto, again, being my boy, just like the master of magnetism comes at you as a friend and not
Yeah.
as an enemy. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Because they're all ready to fight.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. I'm here. I'm here to
No
help.
X-Men.
My boy Charles is in trouble. We'll team up.
I like so my favorite part is just anytime he's there, because he's just like, so he's the first one that discovers the dead
Yeah.
the dead children at the jungle gym.
Turns
Right.
it into a tombstone instead.
Yeah, and like it just says muties on them, and you could tell like again, it's like
the way Matthew Vaughn got him in First Class is like, I've been the subject of people's orders for too long.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the same thing that happened. It's like, I've seen the wars, child. It's like, don't underestimate me. I'm like,
Yeah.
God, yeah, he has seen the worst of it.
Yeah.
He's seen the internment camps and
He's
all
at
that stuff.
Auschwitz. Like he's seen it.
And
It's
so,
hardcore.
Whoa.
and so like when you come in, I'm like, no, you bow. Like
Yeah.
you bow before him. And so I was like, oh.
They
it's like-
Claremont did a really good job of writing him in this.
I did think it was
Yeah.
kind of funny with the writing where it's like, oh, I can't take another psionic blast.
Oh yeah, what are you gonna do?
I thought that was really, it was just it was an artifact of its time.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of like, bro, put your helmet on. But it might have been destroyed in another comic book or some shit.
Yeah. Well,
plot.
it says he had it on, and it said that even with his,
It still would have.
it
Yeah.
says it in there. It's like even with his armament, it still blasts through.
Yeah.
It's just like
Well,
that's
he-
how much they're magnifying his power.
But also, he's like, man, it's like Charles must be holding back because
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
hurts
That was
a
a
lot. And I was
good
like,
line.
Damn.
It's that Spider-Man moment where you're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, Spider-Man's been holding back this whole time. Okay.
Yeah. I was looking at my list of favorite parts, and I was like, I realized I really enjoy the whole scene that is basically the televised event.
Climax, baby.
When Commander Ann falls, it's sad that happened, but it's the way that they showed
With the
fall,
screens?
like
With the screens, like
yeah. I was like, that's such an interesting way, I think, to show what is happening, and
I'll show the
then
cameras.
I do like that it really just because he finally gets his comeuppance at the end, and everybody's like, this dude is cray. This
Yeah.
guy is 50
Well, he's
shades
extreme.
of cray.
He's extreme.
And,
He's
yeah.
extremist.
And so when the cop shoots him, I'm like, this average Joe is like, no, that is not a godlike. That's not a
godly
believer.
Man.
That's not a godly
someone
man.
who believes in God.
Yeah, and that's just like, I love that when somebody gets their comeuppance. I'm like, yeah,
Well,
that's what you get.
the thing is, like, it's not even his whole comeuppance. It's more like you can still believe in the everyday human being,
Yeah.
and that the extremists do not represent the whole.
Right.
And again, it's like so easy to like hear charisma and flamboyant words and emboldened like rhetoric,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden,
And then the guy next to him's like, yeah,
yeah, well, you hear that so often, like it mobs up and all that stuff. But then you do hear someone who, in a story like X-Men, to have someone who's supposed to enforce the law understands and sees the madness and understands like there is right and wrong.
Mhm.
And it's like so refreshing. Like, holy shit, who saved the day? Not an X-Men,
Yeah.
like just a police officer at the
Doing the
event.
right thing. And
yeah.
Yeah.
the weird thing about it, and it's written in a really interesting way, is that Stryker doesn't really. He still kind of gets away with it all.
Yeah.
Like they're like, yeah, he was arraigned, and he said, he announces that he'll be vindicated for everything, and
he murdered
it's a
someone on
strange-
TV,
It's a strange way. Yeah.
And he has like a gajillion thousand floors for his faith healing, probably.
Yeah,
I
no big
mean,
deal.
how relevant could that possibly be?
That's as political we'll get on the show.
My favorite part, it's a really simple thing, but all the X-Men hanging out watching TV, watching the debate going on.
Oh
like,
yeah.
at the beginning?
tension. with
Yeah,
that,
just
too.
seeing them all hanging out, and even Nightcrawler and Peter in regular clothes, just their day-to-day
Well,
kind of things.
yeah.
I like how, what is it? They're having an argument, and then she's like, "You don't understand me," and goes
And
upstairs.
she phases through the
And then-
banister.
And then Wolverine's
Yeah.
like, "What happened, bub?" It's like, happened to half pipe over there. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's what it is."
Oh, I love how they write some of the things he says. When he says maybe, it's MEBBE, maybe.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just like,
the way he says it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Danny DeVito.
But then all getting frustrated one by one, and then going, let's fucking go to the danger room. Let's blow off some steam.
Yeah.
And then them figuring out that their assignments, like, okay, Nightcrawler, you need to move this thing. You need to try to get through this without cutting your bars. And then Kitty's Pride's like, no, we got to do this. We got to work differently.
Switch.
Yeah, and she switches them all around. I loved it.
Again, it's using your don't
resources.
don't waste time on your weaknesses. Go to your strengths and then do those.
yeah.
Mhm.
All they need to do is actually just a rotation of the team, and it's like cool. They can
Yeah.
all do their own missions.
I also really liked Kitty Pryde phasing through the ground and talking about. She's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can't see anything. I'm gonna hold my breath. I hope
Yeah,
I make
that's
it there.
wild.
But also seeing her float through the air.
Yeah, being so excited
Mm-hmm.
or shocked that she's like floating, and she's like, I need to calm down right now.
Mm-hmm.
The way they did Kitty Pryde in this, I was really happy.
Kayla or Ollie?
Ollie.
I was gonna say I loved any time Magneto was using his powers. Like it just looked
Anytime
great.
Magneto was Magneto.
Anytime Magneto was Magneto,
When
it
he
looked
creates that
really
metal
cool.
board to get the cop to the
Oh, yeah.
hospital,
Oh,
Yeah,
That
was
really
really badass.
I mean, as awful as the torture scene was,
yeah,
it was drawn really crazy. Like there's a couple pages that's like all red or whatever.
it's
like
I mean, it's really
Well, it's
drawn
like
well.
Fantasia.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my god!" And
I
then
was like,
they just panned
This
to
is
someone
how
else.
this is some mood right here. It's a
Yeah.
It's
deep,
like a whole quarter of a page.
deep
long.
mood.
Deep mood.
Yeah. Deep
I
cut.
never
Deep
heard
mood.
deep mood. I heard big mood.
Big mood.
Big mood. I
Deep
guess.
mood.
Hey,
Maybe
Big-
deep
big
mood's
mood
the new
energy?
one.
you heard
Well,
it
you
here
also
first.
need something big to go deep.
So that was one of my
Josh?
favorite parts.
Yeah,
Kaylin?
When I went deep.
Um,
doing it raw.
the parts that I liked the most were difficult ones. Like I like them only because they show how warped you have to get to that point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like killing her on TV.
Yeah.
The playground muties thing, like
Yeah, Jesus.
you really got to be warped to be at
was
that
a
point.
read where you were like, oh God.
That line.
Like,
Right.
Why are you
oh.
doing this?
And
'Cause
I
you
was
exist.
I was
Yeah.
worried when I saw the religious thing start going, because I was like, oh, this can get real sticky real quick. But it's true that there are, radical religions, or not religions, radical people within those religions
Using
that
religion as a
use it
weapon.
as
Yes,
a weapon.
that's the point of the story.
And right, and
because
like
you have someone like Kurt Wagner,
Wagner.
Nightcrawler, who is extremely religious.
right,
And Daredevil.
Nightcrawler is a devout Christian.
yeah,
And
and
he
to
does it
have
for love
him
and-
pitted against Stryker is just
Yeah.
like
Opposite end.
Well, again,
very different people.
it's in a face level. It's such a like don't judge a book by a cover, right? But it's also kind of like how you use that religion is a whole nother conversation. And like that whole point with
Or
Shadow,
whatever your system of beliefs are.
Yeah,
it's
Right.
however you use your beliefs.
it's like Shadowcat was all saying like he has every right to become the monster you are,
Right.
but you have no right, and
Yeah.
you're becoming the monster that is,
yeah.
and it's crazy.
like
He
people
chose to laugh and to love.
right, and especially because Stryker like has a traumatic experience and just wants to justify it for
Boo-hoo.
the rest of his life.
Yeah, no, no.
I
Honestly,
mean,
boo-hoo.
That's a really good way to put it.
Like one traumatic experience is not enough to like kill
Become
a
such
lot
a
of
Well, and
villain.
he
people.
blames his wife. He doesn't take any. He sheds himself of responsibility. It's like, oh, it was
Right.
her fault. It's not me.
right.
And to harken back to some classic writing, like Joker always says, like it's one bad day to blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But then like to that thing where it's like Punisher, right? His whole family's taken from him from the mob, but instead he uses that to fight the evil and not
Right.
just
Protect others.
not just blindly kill everyone that crosses the street. It's like you're related to the family. I'm going to kill you, but it's like no, you're a mobster. You do this. You're a sadist. You're a rapist. Da da da. You're dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fully understanding what his opponent is.
Right.
Stryker doesn't understand his opponent, and that's why he kills them.
Yeah.
Like that's as much as it's not a good thing, and I don't like it. I like that it was in here and showed it in such a way where it wasn't the. It was the decisions that this one person made that led to this like insanity cloud.
right.
And not necessarily like, oh, it wasn't religion. Oh, it wasn't like some crazy campy decision.
It was
a self.
him using religion to justify what he,
Right,
what he was
right.
doing, as opposed to it being like necessarily fully inspired.
Right.
Maybe.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Cap's religious.
Yeah. Right. There's
But
plenty of
Cap's,
characters.
Oh, yeah,
Cap's
yeah,
religious,
yeah.
but he's not a xenophobe.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a big.
They're very separate things.
He had there
Yeah.
was like a comic book that happened recently where it was like he was fighting, I forget, this one like super other American ass dude, and he was like, they're taking jobs from us, blah blah, and then he's like all these like immigrants and all that stuff, and then Captain America says like, that's not America's son, and it's like, God damn it, like Captain America just has that good old thing, but then the X-Men like they're in it.
Yeah.
And they're the ones being attacked. So it's an interesting lens to take from their plight.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like two people are fighting on my behalf.
Yeah.
You know? Versus like I have to fight on my behalf.
On my behalf. For other people too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a tough one to read. for
Josh?
Well, I mean, I was also so there are two other things that I really liked it, and that it's more of like an overarching thing. I mean, the scene with Stryker, like the explanation. I'm a sucker for a
Good backstory.
backstory, and it's like it was really hard to read, but it was kind of nice to like get that.
sure. Yeah. For sure.
It was a little bit
You
of a
under-
release
you
that you're like,
understand
why
his
the fuck is he like
motivation.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
is he so?
and then you find you're like, oh, this is why I get it. Okay.
Yeah. Like
but
holy shit.
the overarching thing that I really liked about the book is that there weren't a lot of X-Men. Like the team was actually a
the
pretty
6 or
small
whatever it
team,
is.
and this really, I mean, context. I don't know a lot about X-Men except for movies
Oh, okay.
and reading a couple of books here and there and the animated series, and so I'm kind of used to there being a lot more involved, a lot more
Like the whole cast.
the whole cast.
Let's
like
get as many X-Men as we can in here.
yeah, and so having
The
like
show has a lot of
essentially a
things.
handful of
Select few.
Right.
doing this, it's kind of like cool. There's not a lot happening,
Yeah.
and so it is a story that can unfold in good time, and like it you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on though. Who's this person and this? And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, cool.
It reminded me of Astonishing X-Men, which is kind of similar in the sense that it has a smaller cast of X-Men, I think.
Okay.
It's like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, I kind of liked it where the way I alluded it is actually a really well done was what I think Dark Phoenix did, was that they showed that the main cast are the only ones that go out and all the kids stay in. And everything that happens is at night.
Yeah.
And so obviously the kids are in a boarding school, so they should be asleep.
Right.
And, And Wolverine is drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
how it
this
is.
right.
But yeah, I also really like,
You can't get drunk though.
I mean, you can try really
Yeah.
hard.
Still drinks.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
I really liked. I don't know. I really liked the intensity that it got to. I really
Yeah.
like that. It's like
There's
Oh, yeah.
urgency
it's
to
like
it.
should we get to this point? Like, what makes us does this make us as worse as they are if we're gonna start torturing them?
Yeah.
And then Wolverine's like, we got to. And then it's like, okay, let's do it. And also, I know Corey and I actually are on different sides of the fence on this. To me, this is where Cyclops begins to turn. Like, because Cyclops later on becomes evil in the comic books. Not evil, but he just becomes more Magneto,
A little more
Magneto-esque. And in the end of this, it kind of shows that, like, Cyclops double downs and says, like, no, you guys both don't understand. We're humans in a different shape or form, but we're still part of the human race, and we have to fight for human decency and for human rights and all that stuff. And he shows that both Magneto and Xavier have kind of gone astray from their true goal.
Right.
And that's kind of like, to me, it's the creation of another faction in their mind. Because later on in comics, Scott and Aurora realize, like, Xavier's kind of useless at this point, like later on.
Yeah.
And then they do their own schools. And later on, like, Cyclops will go down this rabbit hole, and then he'll become, like, pretty much like the leader of the Brotherhood and, like, take out, like, the X-Men. They'll become villains and all this stuff. And it's really, really cool. But it's like, to me, it's like he's such a good student of the ideology of equality.
He
and
understands it more than
they do.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like, you know, like Magneto would fear him in some senses. You know, like if Cyclops just walked out with a plastic suit on, his visor, that's the only thing that's protecting Magneto. Like,
Yeah.
and that's, again, a beam from another dimension.
that's what his power
Yeah.
is.
Oh.
When he opens his eyes, he shoots
That's
energy from
insanity.
another dimension.
Whoa.
No
Yeah.
big deal.
No
Yeah.
big deal. It's
big
fine.
deal.
So I really
But
like
Ruby
that,
Quartz will
where
stop
it's
it.
like, again, it's kind of like, it's like a moment
It's eyelids.
in Batman comics where, like, like Nightwing shows more humanity than Batman. And it would then show that inkling of, like, Nightwing could possibly be
a
better
better
than
Batman.
Batman.
Yeah.
Like, Cyclops could probably be better than both of them because,
Which is arguably Batman's goal with Nightwing, is to be a better him.
well, he doesn't want him to be Batman at all.
He wants him to be better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, it just touches on so many things. Obviously, there's a lot of commentary on the time as well, and what
1982.
what crime and racial things were going on at that point.
Torture.
With you know, the black community and being disenfranchised by the government mostly, and the way they touch on it in the opening scene where Kitty's beating the crap out of that other guy, and you know, Colossus' sister comes up and she, like, telepathically is like, hey, you're phasing, like, you need to calm the hell down, and explains to her friend of why she got so upset, and her friend just being like, you know what the worst part is, she's right.
Yeah.
Like, I would be that upset. It's an interesting, really delicate thing that I think Claremont found a really beautiful way of explaining and portraying, and not being afraid to talk about something that obviously he found disturbing.
Well, so, like, he
At the
alludes
time.
it. He alludes it, and he does it straight on Front Street. It was just
Yeah.
like, hey, they said I was a mutie and blah blah blah. It's like, if they talked about your skin color, then you'd be exactly the same way I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's right.
yeah,
And it's like, this is the illusion that you're having to make with these comic books. Like, they tell it right there and there. It's like, think of these things
Yeah.
when you're reading this book.
Well,
And-
and they actually didn't get a stamp or something, right? Because they put the N word in there.
Probably.
I love that.
I remember.
Comics Code of Authority, probably.
There
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, they couldn't get that stamp because they put the N word in there.
Yeah.
To,
that
like,
might have been why
communicate that
until
story.
2003. Maybe that's the reason it wasn't canon until 2003. 'Cause
Could
they
be.
didn't get the
Probably.
stamp, but they may
couldn't
have
include it,
afterwards.
Yeah.
for like a historical.
That was a really tough time because legislation was really cracking down on
Oh,
comic
I'm
books,
sure
and
it
they were
was.
like, "You have to do this."
To talk about one more favorite part, just to lighten up the mood a little bit. One of my favorite things was Colossus stopping the car
Oh yeah.
and being surprised at how, like, are they making cars cheaper now, or am I stronger?
Oh, yeah.
And the tension of, like, him not realizing that, but but Nightcrawler realizing it, being like, oh my God, he's going to kill everyone in this car. He doesn't understand how strong he is. So bamfing in real quick, grabbing Anne, and then bamfing back out before he can destroy the car was just such a well-written moment. And the look on Colossus, the way he's drawn in that moment, being like, holding the engine, being like, where did the rest of the car go? Like, legitimately made me giggle out loud. I was like,
nice.
he's
I mean,
so strong.
also with the lighter mood, I do really love Wolverine's interrogation tactics. I got 3 claws, bub. 1, 2. Where's the other one? It's like, oh my, every time. But like this time it didn't work.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
So Magneto had to get involved.
But like, I don't think we've ever seen that live action.
No.
It's a shame. It is a shame.
His the closest we got was in Logan, but he doesn't torture anyone.
Right.
But we got some claw action in Logan.
I haven't seen it yet.
But you also,
got some claw
but you also
action.
get that a lot in the animated series stuff of the 1, 2, 3. You get that, but then you don't get that in any live action.
Yeah.
It's a
Wait,
shame.
You actually
You
see it
do
the
in the
first
first
time.
X-Men.
The first time you see him peg out his claws, it's 2 claws come out first,
And then the one
and
starts
the
to
third
come
one
out
slowly
and stops.
stops at
It
his
needs to
Adam's
be
apple.
over his head.
Oh, okay.
It needs to be over his head, and the claws need to come out, like protrude out.
Yeah.
It needs to be much more
All right,
violent.
You need to do a
Yeah,
Wolverine
yeah.
movie.
Favorite
Feige?
characters? Or
Oh yeah. Nightcrawler Nightcrawler's my favorite X-Men of all time. So that's anytime he's in it. I think Claremont did a really good job of writing him. The moment he answers the phone when he hears that Charles and Scott and Aurora are dead, like seeing him also in like a button up and jeans when they're in the living room, like watching the debate. I loved all of it. And then of course I have to shout out Magneto in this because I even text Tom after I read this because Tom unabashedly loves Magneto. It's his favorite X-Men, I would say.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorite Marvel characters.
So I text him after I read this, and I was like, "Dude, Magneto," and he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I get it. Like he's fucking phenomenal in this."
Yeah.
Claremont understood him on some level that I didn't even, and I was like, "Oh man, this is beautiful." He comes with it, like to him, obviously. So like when they were first written, Charles Xavier was Martin Luther King, and Magnus was Malcolm X. So they're two different tactics, right? It's the peaceful protest and the active protest. And his thing has always been the active protest, but they have the same ideal of like we want to make sure mutants are safe.
The lovely thing to do with this is like Magneto is the devil you know, versus the devil you don't.
Right. And so the fact that he comes to them and in this moment being like, look, Charles and I don't always agree, but what is about to happen is bigger than that, and I'm here to help. Was like I was so excited when I saw him show up. I was like, whoa, okay, this is huge. So Nightcrawler and Magneto for this are just
Instead of
top
Days
tier.
of Future Past where he's just like, I'm gonna fuck shit up, Leroy.
Anyway,
I was gonna tell you, Corey, I only had one action figure growing up that was an X-Men action figure, and it was Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler?
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, baby.
I would say that my favorite character is, I like Magneto a lot, but and he's not in it very often or very much of the book, is Cyclops.
Cyclops,
I really enjoy, I mean, again, he's not in it very much, but I really liked his like kind of standing up for the mission at the end.
Yeah.
And like, this is what we're about. And
like out-tacting Charles, even on a subconscious level. He's like, look, if I took a straight shot, he would have seen it coming.
yeah.
So I had to take my time and bounce it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, for sure.
I dug that.
Cyclops gets slept on. You should really read Power and House of X.
Oh, dude.
With Hickman.
This stuff right
This kind
here.
of stuff.
Go to Comixology, nerdon.io. And you can download them for $4 to $5.
Well, you're gonna
an
see
issue.
Cyclops lay out that deep energy.
It's not that.
Deep
It's not that episode, but it's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Hickman
Favorite
is killing it.
characters?
For me, it was Kitty.
Kitty.
Yeah,
I really liked
Katya.
Kitty. She
Same.
like knew exactly how she felt
Took
about
her own
things.
initiative on
she
shit.
took her own
Yeah.
initiative. She went on secret missions.
Missions.
She was a
mission for the
strong
missus.
She was a
female
strong
character.
female character.
Well, the funny thing with this is
All right.
After me. No, as in like,
Yeah.
that's why I'm the same.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
I was about to say it's probably going to be Ollie's pick as well, and
Well, the funny
It
thing
is.
with this
It is, yeah.
comic book,
It is.
it's very different than what I think we've been exposed to. Typically, the animated series Rogue very much plays that kind of character,
Right. Yeah.
and not
A lot.
Shadowcat. And so Shadowcat being that's like really nice, and that's why
I prefer Shadowcat. I just like her as a character more.
I
think.
prefer Miss Marvel wannabe.
well, and I really like the moment where they use the nerve gas in the car, and she's like, it was a real moment where she's like, I heard the things go off, so I got out, but it was obviously a little bit too late, so I'm a little messed up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. She just handled everything really well.
Yeah,
and
It was
she
just
got the gun
interesting.
pointed at her at the end and still didn't. She could have just like phased through the floor. She could have done anything,
Well,
but she
that's
was
the
like,
thing.
well, let's just see.
I'm
Yeah.
a sucker for like creative uses for powers.
Yeah.
Like take her powers and have her do like cool things with it. Like I actually wanted more of that from other characters, but I got it mostly from
Right.
Kitty, which was cool.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, also shout out to my 3 favorite X-Men of all time are Nightcrawler, Colossus,
Shout out to the night.
and Gambit. Yeah. So to see his power described as with the speed of thought, he changes into a man of metal. I was like, that's fucking dope.
That's dope.
It's a great way to describe it.
But
With
also,
the
if he-
speed of thought.
If he is getting stronger, that is some elevation,
Yeah.
strength, and all stuff. But the thing is, you also have to apply the base level, the primer, and then realize like, oh, where can they go?
Yeah.
Tom.
Fucking master of magnetism,
Magnus.
baby.
There it
Even
is.
if he was the biggest asshole in a combo, like my boy Magneto.
Oh
knows
man,
what's
deflecting
up.
the bullets
Oh.
and dismantling guns, like that was dope as shit.
The thing about Magneto is like, again, to me, it kind of comes back to I think this is part of my lizard brain of how I look at character and story writing. Lizard brain. It's how you're.
It's the like most primal part of you.
Yeah, it's your
Of
fight or flight
course.
system.
I think there's 3
course.
parts of the brain. It's like lizard. Anyway.
So yeah, it hits your spinal the first, so that's typically how you take knowledge fast. Characters that are highly capable, always will be my favorite, even if they're like the villain. They
Yeah.
will always be like, to me, the person that pushes the plot or the one that's like, yo, this story's going whether I want it or not. Like this guy is going to move it,
You
and
liked Thanos in Infinity War,
I
right?
fucking love
Yeah.
Thanos. Well, it was his movie. He had 23 minutes of screen time, which is the most of any other character.
Yeah.
Well, there's never he's always confident with his powers. Like that's never a problem.
Yeah,
And
well-
so he always comes on the scene. You're like, yeah, he's about to tear
Like
some
even when
shit
he's
up.
like hit hard, he's like, well, I can at least do this and get everyone back.
Right.
But also, if he died, it would have been like, damn, the dude died. Like it would have
Yeah.
been like if no offense, if it's like if Cyclops died, it's like, well, a bullet can kill him. But it's like Magneto's like, that takes a lot to kill this
It
dude.
does.
This guy survived Auschwitz. This guy can survive some shit, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm like,
Speaking of which, he's dope as shit in House and
yeah, he is. He's got a white suit. Look at this suit.
Yeah.
Anyways,
looks
but
good.
Magneto, again, his conviction, his ability to corral the team when they didn't quote unquote have a real leader. Like Cyclops was definitely primed for that position, but like Magneto was kind of there to replace the Charles Xavier Magneto dynamic.
The speech he
Right.
gives to Scott on the roof, where he's like, I want to create a world where hunger and famine won't be a thing. And then Cyclops is like, no one can keep that. How do you plan to sustain that? And he goes, with you guys. Like, that's always been my plan. And I was like,
My future always included you.
his future always included the X-Men, which is like a huge statement from probably their arch rival.
Yeah.
I would
well,
say.
it's actually, and to me, it harkens back on why I think a lot of people don't know and don't realize like General Zod and Superman are great fucking, are like pretty much like
Yeah.
Scott to Magneto. Or like Zod has always been like, I hate that I have to fight the only other Kryptonian in the universe because you don't see the things the way I see it. And he's like, we're the last of our kind and you don't see that I'm trying to do this for us. And
Well, I
Magneto
think
has
that's
that.
it. Yeah, I think he's just trying. He knows that like at some point he can convince them, or they'll convince themselves from what happens to them
Hopefully.
that they'll turn and join. That's why he's part of their plan. So I
Yeah.
think I might have to read that book.
You have to read that book.
But this later on does come out to be where like Magneto wants to take the entire all the mutants and then take them off Earth and put them to a safer place. And
Wow.
Charles Xavier is super against that because he's like, that's not creating peace on Earth. You're creating peace
You're
for
running-
your
yeah.
You're
your
running
free
away
people.
from the problem.
But like Magneto's like, I don't care. We are the mutants
Homo
and we're
superior.
Homo superior.
That's
Okay.
That's their actual.
I know.
title.
I
classification,
know.
but
Just
yeah.
hearing Tom say it in that
Oh, yeah,
deep,
yeah, I
rusty
gotcha.
voice
I
is
gotcha.
like, all right.
Magneto.
But yeah, so Magneto all day. Cool.
Nice.
Qualms. Qualms.
Qualmies.
I thought
start
the
us-
part. Oh,
No, you go.
I
You
thought the
started
part
saying.
with Xavier was a little silly.
Which part?
The part where he's like,
Finding God.
"Oh, I messed up so bad. I'm
Oh.
gonna abandon all my dreams."
Oh,
now."
at the end?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To me, it was
He's being mopey.
yeah, he was being mopey, and
I
like
get that.
I get it.
Yeah.
He almost killed all the mutants.
Or he thought he did.
He
yeah.
thought he almost killed all the mutants.
Well, first of all, he thought he killed his son and daughter, essentially.
Right.
First of all.
So I get it, but it's also like when you reach that, he's like back home safe. Everyone is safe. Why at that point would you be like, oh, I don't know anymore?
Because I think part of it comes from him literally just being drugged and tricked. Like he was conscious the whole time. It's not like someone forced him to do something. Everything was done by his own will, in a sense.
Right.
So everything he'd been fighting for 30 some odd years, 40 some odd years, he became the catalyst for the end of it all. He became the thing he swore to fight.
He got weaponized.
I get it.
His whole idea that mutants are peaceful people, he was like literally the thing he nightmared about. The thing he was fighting against, his entire life mission to fight against, he became it.
Yeah.
So I understood why someone would be shook from that. Like imagine you fighting a plight and then someone goes, "Oh no, we're all fighting you." And you're like,
Oh, I was gonna say it's like
Oh, shit.
I'm holding out for the special one, and then Corey gets me a little tipsy, and then
no.
No.
But you get what I'm saying?
and I'll be like, oh,
Yeah, I do.
I was
Suddenly
trying
you
so
stab,
hard.
because he
No,
thinks he's
that's not how
killing
it
demons
works.
and stuff like that. So like you think you're stabbing some demon, and you come to, and it's your sister, and you're like,
Right.
I just stabbed the shit out of my sister. I'm shook to my core. And then she goes, "No, we're fine now, but it could happen again." So at this point, he's thinking, if all it took was a drug trip for me to almost wipe out all the mutants in my area, in the world, what am I fighting for then? If all it takes is for me to get tricked once.
I'd also say I think he's a little comfortable amongst his friends and family and stuff like that. Because I mean, I would say the way it's written, and I mean, I think it's a product of its time. It's a little like soap opera.
Yeah,
in that
for
sense.
sure.
Yeah.
But I was like,
that's-
yeah, this is what happens. You go back to the original stage where
Uh-huh.
the show takes place in the multicam sitcom
Yeah.
and all that shit, and you tell the end. Do-do-do.
So
Well,
you're
no,
Yeah,
now they go on a
But I
walk
get
with
it,
one
yeah.
person and talk about it.
It just
That's
felt like it was, here's the moral of the story. Eat up.
yeah.
There it is. Like
Yummy.
tasty.
Yeah.
Nom, 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 nom.
End of
But
an episode
I feel
of
like if it had lasted a little bit longer, like if it seemed like, I guess I just didn't get enough of where his brain was leading up to that point. Like it just was kind of like, well, here it is. He's done.
I think it kind of like it's a limitation of the medium because like
Right.
I think it would help if there was like issues beforehand that kind of like shows that like from the beginning he's always been working really hard and all that shit. But like this is like to no fault of his own that he did all this shit versus like if it had been where like he was mind controlled and then he said publicly out loud like I am garbage then it would show like an exact antithesis of what he did in the beginning.
Right.
So I get
Yeah,
that.
there just wasn't something like that for me to latch onto. So that's why I was like, okay.
Josh?
I only have a couple of really small qualms, but I do want to say that they didn't ruin my experience of it. I personally don't believe that I should have to read a comic book multiple times in order to know what's going on.
Right.
That's my own opinion of reading a book. It's like I should be able to get through it and know what I read.
Right.
Whereas this, it wasn't that experience. So having to, not saying I don't want to do the work. It was just like I had to read it multiple times in order to ingest what was going on. My only other qualm was there were a few kind of a range of pages where Stryker and Magneto actually looked the same facially.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
And I actually had to go, oh, wait, where am I?
Oh.
Now that you actually
bit
say
of
that,
that
I
facial
kind of like
blindness.
that a lot.
Cool.
Because, you know, not in a
no,
bad
no,
way, but
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like the face of the enemies look the same,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
It looked like there were times where Magneto just looked like a disheveled version
yeah.
of Stryker.
Oh,
which is interesting,
yeah.
right?
And it is interesting when you put it that way,
Sorry,
but
sorry.
it was hard while I was reading it. I had to go again, stacking on top of like that. I had to go back and go, oh, okay, now I know where I'm at.
I imagine the Spider-Man meme just pointing at each other. It's like, which old white man?
But actually, you were saying like it was tough to follow along. Actually, Kevin Smith was talking to someone that was like, I don't know how to read comic books. I always got bored of them. And said using the app helps out because it just shuffles you to like which panel to pay attention to.
And that's how I read it. I
Oh.
do it panel by panel.
Yeah.
Because it's hard on an iPad, but the one specific
Especially on a phone, it's nice because it enlarges it all. I was
Yeah.
trying to read them page by page on a phone. And I was like, this isn't gonna work at all.
yeah, so going panel by panel is nice too because sometimes the devil is in the details and you want to see what's going on in a panel. And I'm just going to call this out. Like one panel that was really, really hard for me to understand what was going on, and I think I was with Tom, was when he was doing this, the torture sequence in
Oh.
which he explained it to me and I was like, I don't see that.
It's because it's one frame.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not multiple frames. And I think,
That-
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we were, I was, and I
And
say,
he was like, oh, he's doing this. And I'm like, Really?
Yeah, I totally didn't get that at all. I actually thought that
He was just blasting him.
no, I just thought he was like, I knew that he was being tortured, but when I looked at it, I was like, is he just embarrassing him? Like he's just in front, he's in his underwear.
There's a reason that's a screenshot on my phone. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I had no idea what's happening on that page.
Yeah. And I had to kind of look at it, and
It took me a while I had to look at the human, see where the human ended, and then look
Yeah.
closer to where the
And
hero
then the
ended.
next bit of dialogue,
and then
go,
look
oh,
at right.
Yeah.
So it just took a little bit longer than it should have.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I would say like it's a product of its time in that
Right.
sense where
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't even like, it's not explicitly saying it. It's not even explicitly showing it. And the thing is kind of like most comic books nowadays, it's like Josh mentioned it before in most comic books, like sometimes you do have to kind of relearn how to read it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And especially with eras.
Yeah.
With eras, like the
Yeah.
storytelling. And
From 80s to 90s.
I
to
really
2000s.
hate saying this in like a really bad
It
way,
all
but it's kind of
changes.
like a lot of the things that we get now are very force fed and not in dialogue, but by imagery.
Right.
Where it's like, I have to see that this person's having to do this flight mechanic out of their rocket boots. And it's like, I could just know they're flying. Why do I need to know out of the rocket boots? But like most modern comic books
it
have to
looks
fucking
epic.
show you, because they also don't expect you to extrapolate that information from an image, which I think older readers definitely did, because it's kind of like watching old school TV where
Yeah.
it's like it's digital, or it's not digital, it's distorted, and we're like, I could kind of make a face, and you would be able to do that. Now it's like, if it's not on Blu-ray, Ollie, you can't see anything.
Yeah.
No, I remember a time when I was like super young and have X-Men comics or Batman comics, and I would come to a splash page and I would just be
Stare at
amazed,
it.
leave it open like in front of me, and just kind of like take my time, like start at the
Yeah.
upper left and like look at all the little details, stuff like that. So, like, but again, was this a splash page? Because
No.
I'm reading it digitally. It's just a
third,
panel, right?
It's a third.
It's
It's a third?
middle panel.
So yeah, so I could
There's
see
a
like
couple of panels above.
maybe
this guy.
maybe it doesn't call for it, but if it had been a splash
For the-
page,
for
you
the
would have been able to get more
camera there.
detail in there.
Maybe, yeah, if it had been a whole page.
Right.
Yeah.
But
It
the
just-
thing is, like, I think with this too, they weren't meant to be.
For those who might be listening, we're talking about page 34 in the single issue printing.
Welcome to your audio commentary while you're watching reading.
Just so you
Page
know where you got
35.
what,
I
what
don't,
panel
I
we're
don't
talking
even
about, because
know
we didn't
if a
tell.
full
We didn't say.
page. I don't even
It's
know
Magneto
if a full
torturing the
splash
dude.
would have helped. There's nothing telling me.
Yeah. Well, my confusion was what looks like Wolverine claws coming out of his hand, and I thought
Oh.
maybe like did it swap to like Logan somehow, because he's in the scene. I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
he
I
is.
noticed that too. It's like,
And I
is
was
he
like,
wearing?
is the black stuff his clothes being stripped off or something like that? That's where I was just like, I don't know what I'm looking
So embarrassing. That's why he told.
But yeah, so
I'll tell you anything. Leave my underwear alone.
Ollie, any qualms other than that?
There was another screenshot, but then I looked back and I saw a similar visual style, and I pieced it together, so that's fine. But my only real qualm is that it wasn't long enough.
Cool.
I wanted more,
yeah.
a little bit more time with the X-Men.
Things got to end, baby. If
I
they're
know,
too long, they're
I
going to be
know,
garbage.
I know, but you know,
It's
you
like one of
gotta-
these kind of qualms. Like, yeah, whatever.
But that
Like, I
just
coulda gone
But again,
longer.
that just means that I need to read. Maybe I like.
I got more for you.
I'm depriving myself of X-Men.
I got
He's like,
more
"I'm
for
ready."
you, dude.
Again, I would say like
got more for you.
the funny thing with it's not long enough, or I
Please,
didn't get enough qualm. It's like fine dining versus junk food.
Well, it's okay.
It tastes
So
so
there's a
good.
bit more to it. So there's like, you want to be invested in characters. You want the emotional impacts to have certain impact. And I guess really what I'm trying to say maybe is that it didn't have as much of an impact because I didn't feel. I was like, my investment in the characters was auxiliary from previous things. And maybe that's
Right.
that's the nice thing that comics maybe afford you.
I
is
would-
that you can have that and then not worry about getting it. But that's not a complete picture for me. I have pieces of
Gotcha.
that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So for me, I was missing some of those like, oh, I need to care about, Colossus. Like
I-
Colossus' sister, I had no idea.
I think
Oh, yeah.
I think at this point it's kind of like again, no offense or anything, but it's like if your information on X-Men has been as extensive as Batman,
Yeah.
like because I think if an Ollie of another dimension that knew as much about X-Men as you did about Batman
It'd be a
read
different-
this,
yeah.
it'd be a
Oh, yeah,
different
for
story.
sure.
Like versus if
100%.
I gave you like Killing Joke.
Yeah.
I think
Killing
I'm
Jo-
that version of Ali about Batman, but with X-Men.
Well, with Killing Joke,
Yeah.
it's such a bare bones story.
Yeah.
and
So,
so is
and
this.
also just on a broader sense, like a broader stroke thing, like maybe that's just the thing about comics is that, looking at you, Josh, and you and I as we struggle through this journey,
I read
is,
a lot of comic
is
books.
that is
actually.
that this is sold as a one shot.
Yes.
It's not really a one shot.
Because you have to know who the characters
it's
are.
a self-contained story,
Right.
but you need the backstory
it's
of
not
X-Men.
sold as a one shot.
You need to know who Charles is and his
But you know what I
beliefs.
mean? Like you're like, hey, read this. This is a complete thing.
I get what you're saying.
Asterisk, you
If
need
you
to
know
know a
who the
lot about
X-Men-
X-Men.
if you know who Charles is, if you know who their relationship with Magneto is,
Right.
read this.
Right.
I would say, like, it's to this point in Ollie terms, don't watch Marvel What If you haven't watched the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
That's, I mean, yeah, because that's not going to be
Yeah.
poignant to you.
right?
Because you're
Right.
like, what are you
In that
subverting?
sense.
I don't know what's being subverted.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But it's small qualm because only a couple pieces are missing.
for me,
I don't have any.
I think honestly, my general thing that I talked about in the beginning, it's like it's harder for me to read older stuff because it's like, again, I grew up
The font and the writing.
on the newer shit. Like the oldest thing I think I read when I started reading comic books was Civil War by Mark Millar.
Oh shit.
And so like that was like
That's recent.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's
It's
gorgeous.
not really recent. It's like 20 years ago.
But in our timeline, yes.
I know. Even
This is 40 years ago.
But yeah, so like that being said, like it's hard for me to read those older, pulpier comics because it's like it just looks weird. But like other than that, I'm like, I know that I'm just being a little bitch and I need to get over it. And so
Yep.
I mean, like that's the thing. It's like I don't like reading Shakespeare because it has words that I don't understand. It's
Stop
like
being such a little.
that's to me. That's how I analogize it because it's like, well,
You're not engaging the art.
So I guess
it's
then,
like read it, learn how to read it. And
have
that's
you read
it.
other things that are around that have come out around this time?
That time?
Yeah,
No, this time?
this time.
The new time.
No, sorry, I'm
House
pointing at the
Connect.
wrong thing.
Oh.
This thing.
I mean, the closest thing I think would probably be Dark Knight Returns, which was 10 years
Returns.
after.
So, like, I guess then my question for you would be, since you are a bit more, I mean, I've read that same book, but
When was Killing Joke?
that's newer, I think.
80. No.
No?
No.
Oh. Well, either way, how do
Yeah,
you think it
tell me.
stacks up against other comics of its time? I guess would be the question.
I think the thing that I will say about this, and it's like a general theme that I usually talk about, at least it's actually talking about something.
That's a good point.
And it's not just,
The world's going to end.
Yeah.
Look, everyone, look at the robot.
it's like,
It's like, hey, the universe.
I
Hey,
just
look-
really want a deleted
look.
shot.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Oh, Corey.
There it is. Took it down. Screenshot.
Well played. Great shot.
Thank you, Josh.
Killing Joke,
86?
6 years later. So
Oh,
88.
88.
So 6 years time.
That's still a lot of time between comics.
Yeah.
It's enough for stuff to change.
But yeah, I would say like to that point, like again, it's actually about something.
Right.
And it's like
And
more
it's still relevant.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Killing Joke is much
Yeah.
more about like the dynamic between Batman and Batman and Joker. Where this is not about X-Men and Magneto. This is about X-Men and the world.
Yeah.
This is about people and the world.
Humanity
So-
as a whole.
Watchmen, 87.
Oh, wow.
Or 86. So 4 years later.
4 years later.
It still has that same kind of font.
They're both
Yeah.
about the same thing. They're
Yeah.
both about people and society and all that stuff. In terms of that, like I find them equally important
Mm-hmm.
Alan
Because
I
Moore.
agree.
because they're both commentaries upon superheroes and how they fit in our society.
One's good and one's not.
Alan Moore's like, I could be controversial too.
He is a proclaimed and public anarchist. Of course
Yeah.
he's going to do that.
He's going to do it.
That's why we love him.
Rating?
Well,
Rating.
Corey.
Oh.
Oh, you shut up.
Oh, okay.
Of course
No,
you
no,
have qualms.
I just want to make
I
sure.
appreciate it.
I want to give you.
I do appreciate it.
Josh, when we do Big Lebowski, I'm
I was
skipping
gonna
you
make
for
a joke
qualms.
about
Okay.
it, so you're good. No, I don't
Cool.
have. Tom knows. I don't have any qualms about this. This is like my favorite X-Men book I've ever read.
So rating.
Yeah.
Rating.
So me
Corey's
and Tom first,
Corey's a
5.
It's not 5 for me.
No, of course not. To me, I'll talk about it for a sec though. Why it's a 5. The fact
This means that you would never change anything about
I
it.
wouldn't change a thing about it. I think every single beat in this, it tells a good story. I think the fact that it's still a talking point as far as like in a political scope, how relevant it is 37 years later. It hasn't gotten any less relevant. It is impressive to me.
Right.
And the reason I love the X-Men is for those kind of things. They stand up for the little guy. They make sure, they are the placeholder for whoever felt like they've, even on the slightest bit, felt like they're an outcast of any sort.
In some ways, it's most relevant today.
Yeah, like I started loving X-Men because when I was like younger than middle school, I was kind of an outcasty kid. Like my dad got me into comics and he used to read them to me and do voices and stuff like that. And so when I got into school and was reading comics, no one else was doing it. And I would just kind of read them on my own. And so
Yeah.
I always found a really important place for the X-Men myself as well. So like, to me, this embodies from start to finish why the X-Men are the way they are. And like you said, you do need to know some backstory. But if you want to understand at the core of what the X-Men stand for and what they fight for, this is the
this is
fucking
great.
book.
'Cause
This
you
is
get-
the
you get-
book.
This is like all their values and ethics and like
Right.
anything you need. This is like the handbook for that.
Exactly. So to me, that's why it's a 5.
Well,
Good one.
Tam.
Who's second place and third?
I
we
would
have a tie for second and third?
say.
It's Tom next because we're both at 0. Then it's Josh,
guys
and then you and
Okay.
Thank you for paying attention, Ollie. So mine.
I got you. That's why I wrote it down.
An hour later.
And
That's why I just ignore him now.
Yeah.
Easiest thing.
oh, let me write notes down. So I would say a 4.8.
Hey, wow.
Solid 4.8. The narrative I think about this is phenomenal. And I think to me, if anyone's going to plan on making an X-Men movie, they have to read this book first.
I would love an X-Men.
And I think it's because at the heart and soul
Yeah, why
of
haven't they made one yet?
They will.
at the heart and soul of this book, it pretty much does define what the characters should be like and have the actual problems they go
Yeah.
through. But I think for me, I think it's a little bit on the extrapolation on some of the spectacle that this should have a little bit more of. I know it's a really pulpy, gritty. It's a graphic novel, but I don't think it should be deprived of the spectacle that it is because
Yeah.
I know
And it has it.
Chris Claremont's capable of it. And I think it's not even relishing in violence or anything like that, but like balancing a little bit of the pulpy novelty with the graphic.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
4.8. Got it.
Like at the end of Watchmen specifically, at the very end when like the monster's there, it's a giant page.
Right. There's no real splash pages in this. But is that because it's a graphic novel?
No, graphic novels can have those.
Then yeah, I would love to see. I mean, is that more Claremont or Anderson?
The writer and artist have to work hand in hand.
So yeah, you guys trust your abilities. This is a beautiful story.
Josh.
I am going to give this a 4.5. Very good book. I do like it. Some things damaged my experience of it.
You just said in your qualms ruined it for you.
That is a direct quote.
That is a direct quote. Well, the number that I'm giving
Well-
it is actually higher than what I originally had.
Well,
down.
ruin
So-
experience sounds like an absolute. So it didn't ruin your experience.
Yes.
It just affected your experience.
affected. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for correcting
Ollie
me.
looking out.
I got your
Affected. I love you.
You affected him.
Ollie, go.
Next, me.
Yep.
I'm a 4.7.
Woo!
I think this is a great piece. I love this story arc. And the only reason it's gone down a little bit is just because of those things that make it the product of its time. Like some of the dialogue was a little hammy, some of the
The agedness.
soap opera-ness of it. That's really it, but it wasn't enough because I just got such a good sense of like all the X-Men and their bond and like they're just a great team. And it's for once, it's not really a movie. It's not a comic book to challenge that dynamic because it's like
it's not about
they're great.
heroes hating each
Like,
other.
yeah, they have arguments, but then 5 minutes later, they're helping each other solve a puzzle. Like
Right.
it's like
they have dynamic.
Yeah. So
Wolverine's a prickly pear.
good.
A prickly pear.
He is. He can get a lot of fights, but he's lovable at heart.
So just to not leave him hanging, maybe we'll leave it at the end. But what character did you not like? Are you about to talk about that?
No, I wasn't. What were you thinking?
I thought maybe you didn't like Cyclops because I feel like he always gets the short end. from
He does
people.
get the short end of the stick. He's kind of a Boy Scout, but in this one, like, he dies and comes back and goes, "Let's fucking fight." And I was like, "All right, I
Yeah.
respect that. I really respect that." Like, there are plenty of times that like Cyclops
those
isn't
are-
my favorite.
Yeah, those are the moments I latch onto. I think is what it is.
Every time Wolverine calls him Boy Scout, I'm like, "Fucking."
Those
you're
are
a
bad
Boy Scout.
versions of them.
But like seriously, like there are
This
times.
version?
This version, he's fucking perfect.
That's what I'm saying. Like this is the one I should watch. I should
Oh
look
yeah,
at.
you
House
should
of
maybe
X.
read that next.
I
But
will,
like,
actually.
but that's a good guess because I would say majority of the time I'm not like a huge gung ho X-Men. Like Cyclops in the animated series was probably my favorite. But in this, yeah, like dying to the point where he's in stasis and then coming back to life, seeing Magneto there and going, "All right, let's fuck some shit up. I'm here with Magneto. Let's do it." Respect. I gotta respect him for that. Well done to Claremont for making me like
But-
Cyclops.
Kaylin,
Wow.
your rating? Will you make Josh the Grump today?
My rating is a 4.7.
Ooh. Dun 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 dun.
Josh the Grump.
So I was
With
wrong.
a low
Yeah,
4.5.
no.
Who voted for
I know.
Josh?
No, I didn't either.
I think Ali.
thought
No,
you did.
I voted for Kaylin.
I think I did actually.
I think it was Caitlin.
And
Just
I-
Kaylin.
Yeah, it was just
yeah,
Kaylin.
I thought it was going to be something that you were uncomfortable with.
But it's
some
relative,
aspect
right?
of
What
it.
is
Well,
it? Point
well,
one?
Josh-
feel
Point two.
uncomfortable.
No, not like that. Just like
Yeah, we're all
some-
4.5 and above.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
a 4.5
It's okay.
to
Kaylin, it's okay.
4.7.
Josh hates this more than you do.
Hates it all the way down to an A.
He's like, it's
Yeah.
not Paddington.
That's an A. That's a solid A. Yeah, hates it. It's not
It's
Paddington.
not
2.
Paddington. So Batman and Paddington.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I like that. He hates it all the way down to an A. So that's our episode on God Loves, Man Kills. I feel
Yeah.
complete.
I feel complete.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you guys for taking this on.
I'll say you're
At
welcome.
my behest.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for buying it for me.
Oh,
Thank
you.
our listeners for listening.
yeah. Thank
Once
you.
again,
so
if,
much.
if you want to read God Loves, Man Kills, where can they grab that?
You can check out nerdon.io/comicsology. Comicsology
Wow.
really is a fantastic website that I found a few years ago, and I really enjoy it. And it has become a #1 source, I think, on the internet for comic books. And check it out.
It's an Amazon company.
Yes, it is.
If you have an Amazon, then you already have a
And
Comicsology
fun
account.
fact, if you do have an Amazon Prime account, they give you a lot of free comics.
Yep.
Yeah.
On iOS and Android.
He gets a Bardo Comics, which is like
Yeah.
Yeah.
dope.
It's pretty.
I got the Dark Phoenix saga for free.
It's good.
I read
It's
Spawn.
really good.
There are Spawn episode. I read that from a free lend book from them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
dope.
Anyway, Comicsology is great.
and
Sorry,
some of the
we're-
sales,
all
some of the sales do go to us and keeping
Yeah.
the lights on.
Hashtag ad.
But
Keep us doing
tell
more
us
comic book
if
episodes.
you have read this book, let us know how you feel. If you haven't, let us know how you feel.
All levels of feedback are welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Just got a high five.
Also, if there's any comic books that you want us to talk about,
Yeah.
let
Please
us
Let us know.
Please.
You guys have a sense of what I like now, hopefully.
Please
Talking
let
to
it-
you, Patreon.
X-Men and Batman.
Please let it not be Batman or X-Men, so all you could read other things other than Batman or
Oh, Spawn.
Yeah, we're trying to be a little
I like Spawn.
variety.
Diverse.
variety.
I read
Thank-
Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Counts.
After you watch the movie, before you watch the movie.
Before.
Anywho,
In preparation
In
for
preparation.
the
Yeah, okay, anyway.
So much hatred.
It's like the same time.
You know the drill.
Thank you so much for listening. Please do share it with your friends and your
If
family.
you didn't like it, share it with your enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do stop by and rate and review. It really does help.
it
Buy
do.
merch.
If you guys
Use your big words.
you
Use your
guys-
adult words.
I was just smiling because I wanted you to go on. Well, like, wait, why ruin the ad? Way to ruin the
For
still.
the audio listeners,
Anyway.
Anyways.
Anyway, you know the drill. As always,
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.